That was one of my first lessons I learned early on in this business is I forget what band I was working with, but they would call me, they were real excited, and I was real excited too. And not to say I'm not excited about working in this business anymore.
No,
but
I get it.
I would be like, oh, I'm working on and I'd rattle off like the 10 or 15 things I had going. And then they were incessantly just like, what about this? What about that? What's going on with this? What about that?
A lot of musicians that are owners of the band are not business people. So they do not understand how to run a business. They understand how to run a rehearsal. Maybe they make a song sound good, but they're just not business people.
No. I mean, if they were, I wouldn't have a job, so that's okay,
You're happy with that.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, yeah, but again, the importance of everyone staying in their lane. Like, I'm not getting involved in your set list.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode. Ray, we have Rachel Hill from Blue Raven Entertainment. Huge company.
Yeah,
they manage and produce a ton of tribute bands. So we're so excited to have you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Welcome aboard.
So Rachel, we're going to jump right into early on, back in the day of your career. What inspired you to get into the music entertainment business?
Well, I'm a classically trained pianist. I started playing at the age of 5, and I always knew I wanted to do something with music, but being a classical pianist, I knew that probably wasn't going to pay the bills, so I needed to figure out a way to monetize my musical ability. I ended up going to college at William Paterson University, which has a pretty prestigious music program, and at the time they were offering a degree in music management, which was kind of a newer-ish thing that you could go to school for and study. And I was like, well, that sounds good. It sounds nice in general. I'll be able to continue my musical studies, but then also have the business classes too. And then I'll kind of just figure things out from there. So I was able to continue studying piano the whole time I was there while learning about the music business. And I really have to credit them with providing me with the opportunities to get my feet wet. I like to say they put me in places where I could have success. So based on a lot of the networking opportunities and the connections that they had throughout the program there, I was able to meet some cool people in the industry. And, at the time my thinking was, New York, LA, Nashville. Those are the 3 places I needed to be close to. So I grew up in the Lehigh Valley area and didn't want to go too far away from home. So I went to school up in North Jersey, felt like I was going to end up working in New York City, which I did right out of college. I was working at 2 labels, Roadrunner Records, and then I was over working at Sony Jive under Joe Riccadelli, who was handling Britney Spears and Chris Brown at that time, and got a good taste of corporate life in the music business.
Right.
Which I decided really wasn't for me. So then went back through William Paterson. They hooked me up with my now business partner, Shawn, who had just started Blue Raven Entertainment. He was coming out of the merchandising end of the music business and kind of hit the forefront of the agency with him and just worked my way up from being an intern to, a part-time kind of assistant, and really was able to kind of come in at the ground floor and, I think have built a successful company together. So.
No, that's an unbelievable career path to get to where you're at now, giving you a lot of the experience that you have today.
Yeah, definitely.
So regarding all that build up to where you're at now, you've had a few mentors guide you into the management side, the entertainment side, instead of performance.
Yeah, I think it's important for anyone who wants to get into this industry to identify mentors and really listen and have your ears open. And I think don't say no. I think you need to have an open mind and, again, put yourself in situations for success. And I think that you learn things along the way. And especially for kids, I think coming out of school, there's only so much that you're going to learn in the classroom. I think especially for this industry, it's very much hands-on. You kind of got to dive in and get after it. And it's all about the experiences that I think are going to help you identify where you fit in.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, that's from a standpoint of, the background and people training, or even, myself being in that business. It's like I had to have mentors just to break me into different doors that I was unfamiliar with, or teach me the ways, so there's nothing like that. But, jumping like into building, and because Blue Raven specializes in tribute bands, breaking into the tribute scene, there's, as we all know, there's a million bands. So I always love to find out from the business side what kind of key qualities you look for when signing a tribute band.
It's tough. I mean, I'll say this. So Shawn really had the vision for, I think we were one of the first companies that were really doing tribute bands in the way that for a long time they were just looked at as like bar bands. This is just a band that you're going to go see at the bar and they're going to play somebody else's music. I mean, we still have people that call up and, there is a difference between a cover band and a tribute band. And a lot of people aren't even really, privy to that, education. But I don't think tribute bands got looked at as like a viable show that could go into theaters and actually sell real hard tickets. So, Shawn had rented out the Shea Center for Performing Arts back at William Paterson. So the way him and I got connected was through the alumni program there. They hooked me up with him because he had just started the agency and I was newly out of graduating school there. And they said, oh, well, we have this alumni program and Shawn, Gildea just started this agency, so maybe you could go, there's an opportunity there for you. So I said, okay. So he had actually Kashmir, our Led Zeppelin tribute at the time. He had rented Shea Center for Performing Arts. I went and met him at the show so I could get like a behind the scenes, the day of the show, the load in, the sound check, the full experience. And he advertised the hell out of it, probably overspent in advertising, but the show sold out. And he got a lot of press coverage. There was a lot of newspaper articles that got written about it. And I think that was like a turning point. We really used that like one show and one article as like a jumping off point that said, hey, our Led Zeppelin tribute just sold 900 tickets at Shea Center for Performing Arts at, $35 a pop or whatever. So like, this isn't just a bar band, this is a viable act that could go into, we can reproduce this in theaters around the country. And, since then, obviously the tribute thing has blown up exponentially. But I think the thing that we look for now at this point in the game is just quality, quality. There's such a flood of tribute bands that have hit the market, especially since the pandemic, of course. I think things got even more oversaturated because all the national acts that were like, yeah, we're just going to like wait it out and not tour. There was tribute bands that were down to go out and play for 50% capacities and take less money. And, so a lot of tribute bands, I think, were spawned just because they saw the opportunities that existed, especially during the 3 years that our industry was shut down. And now coming out to the other, side of that, it's like there's even more tribute bands than there were prior to that. So it is really hard. I mean, there's a lot of competition, but I think we always say that the cream rises to the top. And we're very fortunate in our position where we can be super picky about the bands that we work with. I think that how the bands present themselves is first and foremost how you're going to get our attention. So making sure that like you've got a great website, you've got great video, and not just like a studio, cut video, because obviously there's a lot of tricks and things that you can do in the studio, but like a great live video is really important to us. And we even go as far now as like, we don't really sign a band until we can actually go and see them live. There is something to be said about that too. So I think too, since we've been in the game for so long, we're like very far ahead maybe of even some of these other agencies. We look at even like the William Morrises and the CAAs, like they're even signing tribute bands now. Whereas before, like they wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
No, it's crazy. The success of like a band like Yachtly Crew that is signed to a big agent, and they're traveling the world in a tour bus, or whatever. It's nuts. Ray and I were fortunate enough. We just had the guitar player from Get the Lead out. And we were just having a crazy conversation about how they sell out Red Rocks. And you just go, what?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It is crazy, you know? So you're right. You have to be on the top of your game.
You mentioned Yachtly Crew, Mike. They're actually in Nebraska. they're in Omaha, which is like 45 minutes away from me right now. So
LA,
these bands are touring.
in LA.
These bands are touring. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I just remember like many years ago when you said you hit it right on the nose. The tribute bands were, if you weren't sure, were they bar bands, which they were, but then, you know, you see them starting to play theaters, you know, small theaters, but selling out these small theaters and then starting to play larger theaters and then starting to go on the road. But behind the scenes, you have to be great. And you have to have so many things that go with the greatness.
Yeah.
You mentioned you guys signed them. Blue Raven Entertainment signs a tribute band after you go see them perform.
Yeah.
Correct?
That's important to us.
I was about to say that because, like you said, filming, you got tricks and everything, but a live performance, the energy has to be there, has to truly be there. What do you look for when you go see the live performance? Give me an example of what, if you walk in, blah, blah, blah. So
there's a lot of things. I mean, and I think you could do all the things right, like all the things that I'm saying as far as like having a great website and great video, and we go see them and we feel the energy between the audience and the band, and you know, they're handling themselves professionally and everything is like buttoned up. Like, I mean, we really don't even get into like alcohol and stuff on our riders. I mean, like, I feel like you're getting paid to do a job, and I'm not like saying that you can't go and have a good time, but like save that for after the show. I guess that's one of our kind of in-house rules too, is that like, because at the end of the day, our roster of artists is all a reflection of one another. So if we send one of our bands into a venue that's going to go in and get drunk and act stupid, then that's ruining other opportunities for the other artists on our roster. So it's really super important that our acts are buttoned up and vetted and know how to handle themselves, because you know, you, like I said, you go in and you send in an act to somewhere and they go and mess it up for everybody else. Well, that's just, it's not fair. And ultimately that falls back on us for not doing our homework.
Agreed. Agreed. 100%. A lot of the young musicians still look at the rock and roll aspect of a performance, and you forget, these young musicians, or any musician, it's a job, and you have to, you're not going to walk into an office with a bottle of something, you're going to, that you'll get fired.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
Your performance is 1000%, has to be solid, and have a drink after the show or on your day off. Do that.
Pretty much.
And that's that. I live by that too. I live by that rule.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is like any relationship. I mean, you don't go on like one date and then say, let's get married. It's like, again, you could do everything right, but then you get down the road and it's just a vibe. I think it just has to be like a good fit from a personality standpoint. Everyone is kind of staying in their lane and respecting everyone's roles within, the team. And at the end of the day, it's like, again, you could do everything right, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. And we've had bands come and go for, a multitude of reasons, but I feel really confident in the current roster that we have right now. So,
and it takes a lot to shake out what's going to work and what's not going to work. And sometimes you can't see that until months down the line. Even if I go into the studio to produce somebody, it looks good on the exterior, but until I dig down, I'm like, oh, they can't do this, they can't do that. It's just, and then you're putting 7 to 9 musicians on stage. That it has to click, just like anything else. My question for you, for your company, is how involved do you get with the branding and the image of a band? Like, the bands that come to you, they're obviously coming with something in mind that, they think is going to work, but your company, do you get involved with any of that?
We're pretty hands-on. I mean, every act is a different case. I mean, I have a group who the producer of the show is just a great visionary, and I don't have to worry about anything with them because I know everything is going to be top notch and super buttoned up. And again, it's just like the vision. And I think so many bands come to us and they just lack the vision, and they really just rely so heavily on us to figure all that stuff out. And
Right.
we're a little bit different than your traditional agency in the fact that we have an in-house marketing person who can do everything from logos to helping with the website to creating tour merchandising programs for our artists too. So we're doing t-shirts and hats, and I think that's another thing too that we offer. And we do stress the importance of merch, not just for branding purposes, but I think that there's a lot of money that's being left on the table.
Absolutely.
Because these bands look at it as more of a nuisance, and they're like, oh, this is this extra thing, and I don't want to have to deal with lugging all this stuff to the show. But at the end of the day, I've seen bands walk out of there making a couple $1,000, if not more, at the end of the night, and that's certainly nice when you're hitting the road and you've got some extra gas money or hotels or travel expenses or whatever. So
Of course.
No, merchandise is huge. I mean, it works for the national bands. So, why wouldn't it work for the smaller bands?
Yeah.
You have your fans coming to see you. They're going to want to walk away with something, a t-shirt, because those same people are probably going to come back and see your next show.
Totally. And it is kind of weird, I'm not going to lie, when you've got these tribute bands and the people are lined up out the door because they want your autograph or whatever. And I'm just thinking to myself, yeah, that's not the real artist, right? But there is this, I don't know, there's still that thrill and this fascination of what these bands are able to do. And I think the really good ones are able to transcend this idea of it being a tribute to hey, we're just going to get up on stage and play it note for note. And yes, there is something to be said about the accuracy of all that, but some of these bands are able to take it to that next level where it's you are almost they have you in a state of disbelief where you're just this is I'm sold. I'm there. I feel like I'm at the concert of this particular artist.
Yeah, it's the truth. I mean, I've been just as of late trying to do my whole research and going out and seeing these tribute bands. And I have friends that play in tribute bands. But the thing that you just said and you touched on still amazes me, So I'll stay till the very end and I'll watch. And there is people waiting to talk to the lead singer. And they're not waiting. They want their autograph or want it. They're almost, they're fanning it out, just like a national artist. So I know even some of these bands now do separate meet and greets, so it's all part of the package, which is, good for them,
For sure.
They can do all that. That's huge. How about the tribute bands? Have any of them ventured out of the country?
Yeah, they have. I mean, we get inquiries for it once in a while, but that's not the stuff that we're actively. I call that
Sure. The fluff, on top. Yeah.
It's you throw out some crazy number and you're okay, yeah, if you want to come to the table with an offer, we can talk. But the bands always, of course, get real excited about that stuff, but I'm always trying to keep expectations, mitigated. I'm look, this is probably a long shot, but, you know, we'll see.
You never know.
And of course, it all has to make sense on your end financially.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see getting the bands, excited with a date, and you don't want to overpromise because then 90% it never works out, So
that was one of my first lessons I learned early on in this business. Is I forget what band I was working with, but they would call me. They were real excited, and I was real excited too. And not to say I'm not excited about working in this business anymore.
No,
but
I get it.
I would be oh, I'm working on and I'd rattle off the 10 or 15 things I had going, and then they would not. They were incessantly just what about this? What about that? What's going on with this? What about that? And I'm okay. Lesson learned, do not tell bands a single thing that you're working on because they will hound you. And if it doesn't, God forbid it doesn't work out, they're going to be well, why? What'd you do? What happened?
And then they're going to blame you.
Right.
Yeah, they're going to blame you for everything.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
So now I keep my mouth shut. I'm I got absolutely nothing going on. I'll call you when there's something good.
Exactly. That's the way to do it. I mean, that's true.
Over the time the tribute bands have been happening, what kind of change in the industry do you see happening? Like there is definitely, from my eyes, and I'm just, looking from 100 feet away, I definitely see there's like some bands, and it's funny, when we did talk to, I think Ray, either was Get the Let Out. We just had Rob from Dark Star Orchestra on, and we were talking about the different types of tribute bands. There's the ones that dress up, the Van Halen bands, the Kiss bands. But then you have the bands like their bands that Get the Let Out that really play it like the record. And that's what, and they're almost calling themselves a cover band versus a tribute band, which is very interesting. So I was just curious your take on where you think the tribute industry is headed and the changes in the bands.
Yeah, I think back to the kind of oversaturation that's happening of the tribute band. There was a lot of venues coming out of the pandemic that they had a really hard time getting a better balance in their schedule. I think it's so easy to just book tribute bands, because there's so many of them out there, and that's just kind of an easy way to like filler. But like, if all you're booking at your venue is tribute bands, then you get pigeonholed as just a tribute band venue. And I don't think anyone particularly wants that. I think there's something to be said for a nice, well-rounded schedule. But there was a lot of venues I know personally that were struggling getting national acts back in the rotation for a multitude of reasons. Everything just got, touring obviously got completely halted during the pandemic, and then kind of getting things back on track. But also pricing. I mean, the pricing just kind of went through the roof. I think a lot of these national acts who were sitting home came back after the pandemic, and they were like, hey, instead of me playing 100 shows for 50 grand, let me play 50 shows for 100 grand. So, but then that just like a lot of the venues that they were going into, it made it so the ticket prices were too high, and they just like priced themselves out of a lot of the spots that they were regularly playing at. So
no, I was just wondering, like, is there a shift? Are you seeing maybe even more bands come to you in the outfits, not in the outfits? Like I noticed one other thing. I think it's actually one of your bands, but their show from a light and visual standpoint is great. It's the Magical Mystery Doors, where, those guys have it together,
I think that is the future of tribute bands, and I think they're at the forefront of that. Is they've created this kind of hybrid where it's not just one band or one artist that you're tributing. Now it's this, their show is a mashup style of Beatles, Zeppelin, and Doors, but it's so tastefully done and so creatively done that it's like, it's an original tribute, which is like hard to say, but it's true because there's no one else that's doing what they're doing, the way that they've created these mashups and they weave in and out of these songs. They've made it just so incredibly unique, which I think is, again, if other bands, I think they'll be catching on here soon and kind of trying to be copying that idea. But yeah, versus like the costumes and stuff, I mean, I'm personally not a big fan. I think that there's a time and place for that. Like obviously you can't do a proper Bowie show without costumes and makeup,
right.
But do I think that your Tom Petty needs to go put a blonde wig and a top hat on? Not necessarily. I mean, I think at the end of the day, people just want you to sound like them, and they want the band to be tight and feel like they're experiencing the music the way it should be, that they remember it. So
absolutely. Yeah, no, totally agreed.
A lot of the fans that go to the show, they obviously want to remember it, and they want to talk about it, and they want to return and again and again. So what you mentioned about what were they called, the magical mystery
doors.
Yeah, that sounds like something, like a great idea. That just sounds like an excellent idea. And I'm sure the stage, the presentation of the show is
that's
happening.
The other
It's
thing
great,
too. Yeah, is the producer of the show is the visionary that I had mentioned earlier in the conversation. But yeah, working with someone like that just makes my life so much easier as an agent, because so often I'm arguing with bands about just basic business, and also again the show. I think there's something to be said for a lot of bands just want to go up there and I mean, let's face it, they're not particularly interested in investing in their career. You know, they just want to make all the money and they want to keep all the money, but they don't necessarily want to reinvest it back into their career.
My big thing that I always say is like, a lot of musicians that are owners of the band are not business people. So they do not understand how to run a business. They understand how to run a rehearsal. Maybe they make a song sound good, but they're just not business people.
No. I mean, if they were, I wouldn't have a job, so that's okay, you know?
You're happy with that.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, but again, the importance of everyone staying their lane. Like, I'm not getting involved in your set list and the musical aspect of things. So, you know, we kind of just ask that, like, you know, and again, it's like we work for our bands. We make that very clear. It's like they don't work for us, we work for them at the end of the day. But we're here to help, like, guide them in a certain aspect. But yeah, again, the visual, not to get too sidelined here, the visual aspect I think is something that a lot of these tributes sleep on. But like the bigger that the band gets and the bigger the show gets and the bigger rooms that you go into, you know, in a 250 seat room, the visuals, it's like, who cares? You know, it's small enough that like it's going to be overkill in a room that size. But now you're playing the Keswick Theater or Penn's Peak, which is 1,500, 1,800 seats. And, you know, you've got, you know, you're a couple rows deep. Now it's more than just, hey, the band sounds really good. It's like, well, what visually is going to be captivating to me as well? And those guys are just nailing it on all fronts. I mean, they've got screens and lighting and multimedia, and the whole thing is choreographed. I mean, it's just really well done.
And it's an easy sell for you. And at this rate, it's an easy, just here's your schedule.
Totally.
And we start June to October, whatever. And when it's a show, it's an easy sell. So
exactly, 100%. Yeah, it makes my life easier. I mean, the band's happy. And that's the thing, too. I think these bands get frustrated and sometimes, like, things just aren't working. And it's really like you're kind of just like, it's a conundrum. You're like, I just can't really figure it out. I mean, I've got a great band and I don't know if it's just something about, like, the timing or the current market or what people are interested in or what they're not. Or, you know, sometimes it's just like you can't really figure it out. But, like, yeah, when you have a show like that, and immediately you click on the video, and in 20 seconds you're like, okay, wow, this is a show. You know, that makes everyone's lives easy.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like having a hit song. You know, you can't figure out why it's a hit song, but sometimes it just works. You know, but those guys are putting that extra effort into it, which I think other bands need to think about. Hey, if you're out there watching, you better think about it, because that's going to start to be, you know, people are going to want more. They're going to come to their show and then they're going to go look at the next band that performs and they're going to be like, the music was good, but the show, you know, they needed something, versus the typical Guns N' Roses with the hat, or the Van Halens, you know, with the hat and the guitars and stuff.
It makes a difference from a $25 ticket to a $50 ticket. You know,
I was just going to say, it's all about value.
Yeah.
The more that I can conceive to my buyer that you're getting like good bang for your buck, like, hey, look, this band's coming in with full production, full screens, like it's a real show. Not only are you going to be able to command a higher fee for your artist, but in turn, the venue's going to be able to command a higher ticket price. And everything just works in tandem with each other. So, yeah, it's a lot more than just like, hey, 5 really good musicians are going on stage and they sound really great. It's a lot more. It's become a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, creating an experience. That's what I think you need to do. I have to ask you, so how do you pair a tribute band to a venue? So, because there's so many venues that have, and just myself even going to them, there's some smaller ones and I'm like, oh, okay, but they sell it out and it doesn't hold that many people. But is there a certain formula that you use to pair the venues to the band, or not really?
I mean, I think just with experience, like, and again, we've been doing it for so long, we kind of understand the venues who have their shit together, so to speak. Like, it's just a well-oiled machine. It's like, you know, if you put a band in there, like, it's going to be, they're set up for success. Their marketing is on point. They have a great mailing list. They have a devoted fan base that's coming to the theater. And then some other shows you book, like it's a buyer that I've never worked with before. It's like you kind of want to dig in and do your homework a little bit. Like I'm very interested to see, and I think it's a lot about just asking the right questions too. Like, okay, so, you know, what shows have you had success with? How many tickets are you generally selling? Like it's all market dependent, I think too. But yeah, there's a lot of different factors I think that go into like making sure that it's going to be the right venue for a particular band. But again, I think we like have been doing it for so long that again we kind of know, like who the real players are.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Do you also deal nationwide, or are you like leaning just towards a certain area of the States? Or
no, we are. So another good thing about Indigo is we're operating that agency on a territory basis. So I have a completely new territory within Indigo Talent that Blue Raven was a little bit more just, we're RA based. So, you know, myself and the other sales rep, we have our specific artists on the roster that we're responsible for. And so it's pretty much, we can book, you know, anywhere with certain exceptions. We kind of defer to whoever has the stronger relationship. Like if it's one of my venues that I primarily work with, then I kind of just handle the room. So it's a little bit more freeform in that way. But with Indigo Talent being territorial, it's forced me to really make a lot of new connections, which has in turn helped Blue Raven, you know, and that was kind of the vision, I think, for that too, was, hey, this is going to, you know, send us out and we're going to have to carve out new territories for ourselves. But in turn, you know, while I'm got them interested in Indigo Talent, you know, maybe I can slip in a Blue Raven act here and there.
Absolutely.
And it's already been working that way. But yeah, I mean, for Blue Raven, we've primarily been really strong, like east of the Mississippi. I will say that we do book nationwide, you know, but it's hard to get. A lot of our bands are East Coast based, really like Northeast based, and it's hard to get the money that we need to make it viable to send them all the way out to California. Like we'll do, you know, some shows in Colorado or Utah or California, but there's not really like a West Coast tour, so to speak. So most of the touring for them happens like from Maine to Florida, probably like up to Wisconsin and back. I mean, we'll do some stuff in like Texas and whatnot, but primarily it's east of the Mississippi, at least for the stuff that makes, you know, financial sense.
Yeah.
Have you sent any of your bands out of the country?
We have. So we were working with John Waite on our roster prior to Indigo, and he was doing tours in Australia and the Netherlands. And right now with Emerson, Lake and Palmer, who's another current client of ours on Indigo, we're talking about a South American tour and a UK tour for him as well. And I actually just did a date with Barry, who I spoke of earlier, up in Canada, and there's probably going to be talks of a full Canadian tour for ELP too. So
how many artists does Blue Raven handle? How many, like, on your roster?
I think we probably have 30 on our roster, maybe less. We actually just kind of downsized a little bit during the same time that we were launching Indigo Talent. It was just, we had some things happening internally where I think it was just a good moment to kind of look at everything and do a bit of restructuring. There are a lot of good tribute bands out there, but there's only so many hours in the day. And admittedly, I think we had ourselves spread a little bit too thin. So during the merger, it was just a good time to kind of reevaluate and really kind of streamline things and consolidate in an effort to, you know, service our clients better. And it's been working really well. So
that's great. And now tell me a little bit more about Indigo.
Yeah, so Indigo Talent was launched back in September of last year, and it was a merger with a gentleman named Tim Drake, who's been running the Roots Agency for the last 30 years, and he's handled everyone from Southside Johnny to Dave Mason to Richie Havens, still handling Darlene Love. And we had national acts on our roster as well, but it was just a way to, again, kind of create a little bit of separation from the tributes. There is a little bit of a stigma, I think, when, you know, we're looking at some national acts and they would come online and they would see that, you know, hey, you know, primarily we are a tribute band agency. And there's nothing wrong with that, but in their mind, I think they like to be presented in a different light, which I can respect. So it was just a way for us to, move our nationals off of Blue Raven, combine with Tim's roster, and now everything's under the Indigo Talent umbrella.
That's amazing.
That's great.
Because I would imagine that you get calls from different people that maybe look at Blue Raven that need management, maybe from an older artist, they don't want to go with a huge management company where they're going to get lost. And maybe they considered, hey, this is more of a smaller company. We're going to get the attention that we need, which is great. So for yourself, now that you're in both companies, I have to ask, do you prefer one over the other, one artist type over the other, or it just all goes with the day of work?
Yeah, they're very different.
I know that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
that's why I ask.
Yeah, it's very different. I'm learning a lot from the Indigo Talent side of thing. And speaking of mentors, Tim Drake is a perfect example of a mentor. He's been doing this for a very long time, and in the short time that Tim and myself and Shawn have always been friends, throughout the years, but now obviously joining in this business venture has deepened our relationship, and I'm getting to learn a lot from Tim, which has been really great. And it's definitely way more of how your classic, national level agency works, where it's like you're thinking all about the routing and the tour and what is the right play for my artist in this particular market. Like, it's great that you have an offer in from, A venue and B venue, but what is the right play for that particular act, and making sure that everything is like really buttoned up, and, it's the hurry up and wait. And, sometimes you're like thinking you're at the finish line, and then all of a sudden the tour makes a complete 180, and like what you thought was going to happen is like no longer. I mean, I've dealt with that plenty of times we do a little bit of talent buying for, some venues that need help too. So I've been in national act world dealing with the various agents at all these other, like the CAAs and the William Morrises, and you like think that you're so close, you put in an offer, you wait for like 4 months, you hear nothing, crickets, and then all of a sudden it's like a scramble to be like, oh, do you have this date? And then you get everything lined up, and you like give your client like hey, we're 99%, this is looking really good. And then all of a sudden they hit you with the email that's like, yeah, we're just going to scrap this, and the tour's going in another direction. And you're just like, wait a second, like what happened? But yeah, it's very different. The Indigo Talent, a lot of those artists already have outside management. So it's very different in that way. The Blue Raven roster is a lot more hand-holding, and it's not because we love to do it. I feel like there's kind of a necessity that comes along with that too.
And it's also, I believe that the tribute bands don't come with the experience that some of the seasoned national bands already have. They've been touring all their lives. So basically,
correct.
You have to teach them the ways, for their path of where they're playing. I get that.
For sure.
In your career with all the tribute bands, is there any some rewarding experience that stands out in the back of your brain, that you have in this business?
Not one. I mean, there's been some cool opportunities that that's the thing I love, is like when I'm able to call up my band with a really great show or a really unique opportunity. Like, hey, I just got you like our Carpenters band of all things. This will be their second time going on the Moody Blues Cruise, the On the Blue Cruise.
Sure.
And that one's really peculiar because the guy who books that, he's looking for really like oddball stuff. Like the lineup is just like, it's almost bizarre, but it somehow works, kind of all together. It's like, wait, I actually did a double take when he called me. He's like, hey, this is so-and-so from the On the Blue Cruise. We do, Justin Hayward. I'm interested in your Carpenters band. I'm like, what does my Carpenters band have to do with the Moody Blues? But then I go on and look at his lineup, and he's got like Larkin Poe and like, just kind of, it makes sense.
No, I'm sure there's many. And I totally get being able to give your band something that they're just like, oh my God, this is amazing. We had this experience, like the cruise, which is, they most likely would not have got it if the call didn't come into your office and they weren't with you.
Yeah, it's not always necessarily about the money. I mean, bringing my band like a really strong offer money-wise is always great, but
Of course.
I think some of the more sophisticated bands like a Magical Mystery Doors, like to him, it's more about like, how is my show going to look in this room? Like, they're more concerned about like the brand and the presentation above all else. I mean, obviously, the money has to make sense, but I think at the end of the day, there's more to look at. Like, okay, you send a band on, and it's again, the one opportunity leads to the next, which is kind of full circle with how my career happened in this business. It's the same thing with an artist too. You go and do one show, and maybe there's other reasons at stake while you're doing it, not just again from a money standpoint, but then you go and someone that's at the show sees you and provides you with the next great opportunity. And had we not taken that gig, we wouldn't have gotten, this thing.
The offer.
So.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so true. One opportunity always leads to another. And the younger the band and that for yourself, I bet it's to explain that to a young band or just a tribute band that you're not going to make this much money on this show, but we're going to book other shows because of this opportunity. So we got to do this.
It's challenging.
It is.
It's challenging. You can lead the horse to water, but I think the thing that we always say is the number one reason why bands fail is because they can't get out of their own way. And it's like, if you just listen to the people that you're hiring and entrusting with some of that decision making, you might be a little bit, further along. But a lot of bands, unfortunately, think they got it all figured out.
Oh, yeah. Listen, you're doing it in the music industry, so it is what it is.
That's it.
I have to ask you, so I'm looking at the time before we run out of time here, right? I wanted to find out, is there a long-term vision for Blue Raven? It's been around a while now, and now that you did the merge, but I'm asking exclusively for Blue Raven. Do you see the company expanding in any way?
Yeah, definitely. We just hired on some more sales reps, and again, it's like there's only so many hours in the day, but yeah, we're looking to expand from that capacity. I mean, I don't know, there might be a vision one day of combining both of these companies again under one umbrella and doing it more I don't know.
There's tons of companies that do that kind of stuff, which is great. And now that you have both companies, you have the ability to do that.
Exactly.
And I think that's smart because I've seen, which is going to open opportunities for your tribute bands, but a lot of the bigger tribute bands now even getting to go on tour with national acts and being the opener for Train or whoever it might be. You look at it, you go, how did that happen?
I know. Yeah, there's weird things. I mean, we go to a fair amount of these booking conferences throughout the year, and I can't tell you how many people that I meet with will be like, I really can't stand these tributes, but, damn it if they aren't the ones paying the bills. And I just have to laugh at myself because it's true, the tributes are the ones footing the bills for a lot of these national acts that, are commanding a really substantial fee, but aren't necessarily doing the tickets to back it up. So they might be taking a little bit of a loss on those shows. But meanwhile, these tributes are coming in and they're selling out and they're making money. So say what you will about the tributes, but that's what people seem to want to see right now. So.
No, absolutely. Yeah. You know what? And I do one other question, which we didn't touch on, which I'm sure a lot of musicians that are going to watch this are going to be curious about. How are people finding the tribute bands when they do a show? Do you find that it's really, really on social nowadays? And if so, do you find that different socials work for different bands? So in other words, Facebook might work for, an older genre. Or
sure.
If you're doing a Britney Spears band, it's TikTok. Are you finding that that's, they have to get into the social world?
Yeah, I think so much just from both the artist and the venue standpoint has moved towards digital marketing. I don't really find that traditional marketing is working in most situations. I'm sure there's some exceptions to the rules still, but not many. And you're exactly right with all the various platforms. It's very generationally based. So,
Sure.
your boomers are still on Facebook, and then all your younger kids, of course, are on the TikToks and stuff. I do find that Instagram is kind of the sweet spot a little bit because you are still capturing a little bit of that older crowd and the younger crowd too. And I think
I agree. Yep.
just from a visual standpoint, I find that platform to be the most appealing and the most diverse just from what you can do creatively with it. But yeah, I definitely think that the socials are certainly the way to go. And I mean, just from, I think, venues and like who they're used to dealing with. A lot of our business is just like word of mouth. Like
Sure.
a lot of people are like, hey, you got to call Blue Raven. Oh, you want a great tribute band? Call Blue Raven. Or, hey, we just had, Eagle Mania. They were fantastic. That's who you want to use. So.
Awesome.
Great answer, because it's all true. Well, Rachel, the time has flown by, and this has been great. And so Ray and I always laugh because we have about another 100 questions to ask you that we didn't.
And we
even
never get, because the conversation always leads to different questions, and I
It
love
does.
that.
It's easy. Yeah.
And you're so great to meet you, Rachel. Yeah, seriously.
And you were great, and we loved your answers. Yeah, and we appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.
So anything on your end you want to promote?
Oh, geez. No, not really. Off
We
the top.
saw your dogs, so that was good. So
I know.
they're promoted.
The
They're going to
dogs
get on the show.
Yeah, that's our HR department. So
Perfect.
That's a good one, too. I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate you being with us. So
Hey,
thank you so much.
Thank
Hang
you.
tight. Hang tight.
Great to meet you, Rachel. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Tribute Band Sessions podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop a comment. Want more info? Sign up to our mailing list at TributeBandSessions.com. It's the best way to stay in the loop on upcoming episodes, special guests, and behind-the-scenes stories, and all things tribute bands. And don't forget to follow us on all our socials at Tribute Band Sessions. Thanks for watching.